message for it. The faces will not be shown, and I think there's an okay on the top of the screen, and I think
Yeah, the screens have changed. I can't keep up with that now. So we're recording. I didn't get an approval thing either. I don't know if other people did. In any case, good morning.
co-host, the host doesn't, and the co-host doesn't.
Okay. Well, in any case, it is Tuesday, June 18th, 2024. And just before we start, a couple things, maybe one thing. I am going to be traveling for the next 2 Tuesdays, and I'm not sure how I'm going to do this. We'll see. I may be on my phone in my car, so hopefully I won't be like moving in the car, but you never know. Maybe we'll do, the driving meditation. But just to let you know that I do intend to show up, and if for some reason I can't show up, I will correspond with Monica, and she'll open the meeting, and you can meditate and talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah, we can read Kevin's daily reflections and
there you go. Almost as if I was there. All right, well, we're going to begin with the 20-minute sit, and I will give some guidance to help people get started, and then give you a little time to sit and practice. So just settling into a comfortable posture, upright but not stiff. And in fact, it doesn't even have to be upright if you have physical challenges that make that difficult. And beginning by just bringing attention into the body, feeling yourself at rest and stillness. And feeling the body breathing. Just this initial moment of meditation can be revealing. How am I feeling right now? Sometimes you close your eyes and you just immediately have a sense of relief. Just what I needed. Take some quiet time. Other times can feel difficult just to stop moving, to stop thinking, to stop interacting. And so there can be a challenge just with that choice to become still, to turn inward. There's no right or wrong way to feel when we're meditating. We want to investigate what is happening. And in that process, really through paying attention, we can cultivate a degree of calm, clarity. But not to set that up as a goal so that there's this comparing all the time. Is this how I'm supposed to feel? Is this working? How can I make myself feel more meditative, those kinds of efforts and striving that we can fall into. Rather, we trust the process, trust in attention itself. This is refuge in the Buddha mind, the mind of awakening. You can use the breath as a focal point, feeling the breath at the nostrils, with the belly. The nostrils, we just feel the touch of air coming in and out. The belly, there's the movement, the rising and falling, the expansion and contraction. The breath is a simple object of experience to pay attention to. It doesn't have meaning. Most breath is just a neutral experience. So it allows us not to get swept up, but just be with the simple experience of breathing in, breathing out. It's natural for the mind to wander, for thoughts to take our attention away. So we gently come back moment by moment. And we're trying to let go of the stories, to see them arising in the mind, to feel them in the emotional sense, but not to be captured by them, not to believe everything that appears in the mind. This is one of the great challenges of meditation. We're so habituated to believe our thoughts, we don't even see them as thoughts, but rather as information to be acted upon, to be figured out. So we try to step back from that. Ask ourselves, what is this thought? Seeing how it's an expression of self, projection, identity. Seeing how thoughts are just passing through, coming and going, unstable. Seeing that thoughts are unsatisfactory. We have some feeling that by thinking we will solve something, answer something, end something. But there's always more. And so we learn to let go, simply be with the breath, with the body, with awareness itself. Well, I'm trying to ring the microphone, but I'm looking at the audio settings and it doesn't look like it's working. And so I tried the other day, I tried this, the original sound for musicians, which used to be the thing. And you can't hear that, can you? Yeah, like Zoom is completely suppressing my microphone no matter what I do, my bell no matter what I do. It's
I can hear you, but nothing else.
live performance audio. Oh, this might be the one. Let's try this. No, nothing. Bastards.
Ding. There was like a popping sound. I don't know if you tapped the
Right.
mic.
Yes.
So the popping sound is like, so the way it works is, it suppresses anything that isn't a voice. And so when the sound first comes, it's not sure, but then it's like, oh no, that's not a voice. So it cuts it off. Steve knows what I'm talking about. Musicians. Um, so I really don't know how this is supposed to, maybe John can figure it out for me.
There an option to suppress background noises? You could
Well,
shut off.
So traditionally, there used to be on the screen a thing that said original sound for musicians. And that's the one that's supposed to remove the suppression, right? And the only way you find it now is in the settings. But now when I do it,
I just found a setting that does say
echo cancellation, let me remove that. Let's try this.
background noise removal, and it's not checked.
Nope.
But it's under the audio settings.
Let's see. How about high fidelity? No. All right. Well, we're going to live without it. From now on, I'm just going to say ding, and then you'll know that the meditation
Wait,
is on.
what Abigail might have an idea. Can
Oh.
you say that again, Abigail?
Yeah, when I went to audio settings,
Yeah.
there's something that you just mentioned. It says no. Oh, okay. Okay, there's under audio profile, it says Zoom background noise removal recommended
Right.
for use, but that's not checked on mine, and I don't think that I can. Let me try my bell,
Okay.
see if you can hear that. Nothing. Okay,
Nope.
let me check that.
Nope.
Okay, now I've checked it.
Do it again.
Hold on.
All right. Well, let's talk about recovery.
Yeah.
Recover from our frustration.
That was fun.
Okay, if that's what you call fun. So good morning. Yeah, you guys know I don't usually prepare for these, which leaves me really in a problem when my head is confused. But I've been, I started doing some writing. I think I might have mentioned this last week on feeling, and any of you who are writers, and I know there are some of you, probably many of you do some writing of some kind or another. You discover that whatever you start to write about, it starts to kind of capture. It starts to manifest in your life. So, like when I was writing Living Kindness, it was actually really nice because I was writing about loving kindness, and so that was on my mind a lot. And when I was working on the Anapanasati project, which has not, probably will not be published, sadly, it really increased my awareness of mindfulness of breath. So I'm not sure I want to be writing about feelings because I'm like, it's just very interesting. Like, oh, damn. but what in a way, there's a way in which I think that my whole understanding of emotion and feeling is, well, it's certainly changing. So just to go back, like, and I imagine many of you have had painful experiences as adolescents or teenagers. Um, and that, that for many of us, that's when our addiction started. And certainly for me, even before my addiction started, I started to deal with depressive states. But what's interesting to me is how, and kind of what I want to talk about is how I interpret what I feel, how I name it, what I think it is. And that I think is a lot more conditioned. That is to say, we learn how to define what we're feeling from others, from our environment, from the culture. And it's not necessarily an accurate depiction. So to get down to specifics, I was talking about realizing how much anxiety I have, and one of the stories that I wrote about last week was being on my way out to Spirit Rock to teach one day and realizing as I was getting just past Fairfax, and there's a hill that you go over and then into the San Geronimo Valley, and having this feeling that was getting depressed. And that's how I interpreted what I was feeling. And first of all, I realized I often feel like this right around here. And then I thought, but I'm not, like, depressed implies unhappy, and I'm not unhappy about what I'm doing right now. I'm not sad about going to Spirit Rock. And so then I asked myself, what would a normal person feel? Or what would be, a logical thing to feel for somebody who was going to speak in public? And I thought, well, the natural thing would be anxiety, would be stage fright or some kind of, fear. So then I thought, and this is my conjecture, and this is what I'm really churning around a lot, like, how did that misinterpretation get in there? And one way that I think it could have gotten in there is that depression is sort of the way I define uncomfortable feelings. And that like when I was 14, the first time I thought I was depressed, I was the youngest of 5 brothers. My mother had been institutionalized for a while. There was a lot of depression talked about. And I think that when I started to have uncomfortable feelings, I thought, oh, I'm depressed now. And so that became my way of defining uncomfortable feelings. Like I just fit everything into that box. At the same time, that's hard to, I know, I'm sorry if this sounds like Kevin's therapy session, but, I'm, I'm talking about, the reason I use myself is because this is the person I know, but also because I do think that human experiences are very universal, and that if I can uncover something about my own experience, there will be some relevance for others. So the problem with that theory is that there are definitely different symptoms from anxiety and depression. Anxiety is much more felt as energy, high energy, right? Nervousness and the heart beating and all that, the stomach churning. Depression is heavier, associated with dullness, sleepiness. So it's hard to, and maybe some of you may have better theories than I do. But what the bigger point to me is that I really don't know what I'm feeling, and that I want to interpret it. So, in the Buddhist teachings on the kind of construction of self, there are these 5 elements: body, feeling, perception, volitional formations, consciousness. Okay, which is like, when I was first, this is called the 5 aggregates. When I was first exposed to this, I was like, what are they talking about? But it's really relevant to this, which is that when there's a feeling, that's the second of the aggregates. That feeling, it has a physical component. So that's the first of the aggregates. And then it triggers a thought. It triggers an interpretation. I name it. That's the perception thing. So the feeling itself has no name. It's just a feeling. It's through, and perception, the naming function is very conditioned. It's something we're trained, we spend a lot of time in our lives and a lot of energy trying to figure out what things are, or what's going on, name them, right? Because that gives us a sense of control. Like, it's just interesting to me that, there's these animals and trees and stuff, and we give them all names, I mean, they're not those things. They're just things there that have functions and lives. But getting back to feeling, so there's a body experience, there's a feeling component, which according to the Buddha, it's just, the feeling is just pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. But the perception is the thing that starts to make it more complex and create the story. And then the volitional formation is when actually that's the story as well as the action. So I feel something, I name it, and then I respond to it. That's the volition, right? Now I have to do something with this thing that's going on. What am I going to do? I need to fix it. I need to change it. I need to suppress it. I want more of it. I want less of it. I want to get away from it. So these 3 components of the 5 aggregates to me are so critical to like watching what's going on. Like, and when we're meditating, we can see this playing out, right? And so we're trying to get back to the raw felt experience and the body experience and just be with those 2 things as much as we can. Nonetheless, it is also useful to have some understanding, some way to name and to understand what's going on. And this becomes, I think just a challenge, a kind of a journey, like understanding finally, because what's important, we realize, and this is very much what we realize through meditation practice, what's important isn't the thing itself, but our relationship to it. How do I hold this? What do I do with this? How do I avoid this causing more pain than it might already be causing? If the feeling is unpleasant, how do I not do something with that? And so, going back to, I mentioned that, I had trouble sleeping last night, and it's not actually that I have trouble sleeping, it's that I have trouble falling asleep. Once I'm asleep, I'm good. And even once I fall asleep, if I wake up, I easily fall back to sleep. But it's very interesting to me. I'm lying there and I'm like, it's late at night. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I don't feel sleepy. And my body is restless. There's nothing, but there was nothing in my mind that was disturbing me, which is good. I mean, it's not, I wasn't worrying. I wasn't like churning thoughts, but my body was really having a hard time being still. And it's so interesting, right? We start to see like feeling is such a raw thing. Underneath it all, there's just this visceral experience. And and so I just try to hang out with it. I don't like it, but I know that if I try to do something with it, it doesn't there's nothing, there's no way I can't control it. I mean, I wish, but I can, so I try to keep this very neutral attitude. Like I will fall asleep when I fall asleep. The amount I will get, and I will be okay. It's okay to not get 8 hours of sleep every night. You're fine. But the mind, of course, just wants to get in there, because I used to get really uh, stressed, but when I would feel that. So this process, I mean, you can see I'm very much in the middle of exploring this, and it's kind of embarrassing in a way. Here I am supposed to be like a Dharma teacher, and I'm talking about not being able to fall asleep. Like, oh wait, like a professional meditator should just like take 3 mindful breaths and fall asleep. That should be, you should be in control of all that. Like you're a meditation teacher. Come on, like. And I actually used to be better at that, but there are some of you who are of a certain age, so like as we get older, sometimes sleep becomes less of our, we. It's really easy to fall asleep in the middle of the day. It's really hard to fall asleep at night. So there you go. That's life. So just to get back to this idea of just really what I think I'm talking about is mindfulness of feelings, and even to understand what that means, because that's been, central to my practice for all the time I've been practicing, practically for over 40 years, and it's central to what I teach as well. But and I've always been curious, where exactly does the Buddha talk about feeling, or I should say about emotions? Because, the teachers that I worked with early on, particularly Jack Kornfield, that a lot of what they pointed to was like being aware of feelings. But when I got to the point many years into my practice, when I started to both to teach and to explore more what the Buddha actually taught rather than what Western teachers interpreted, I couldn't find what I wanted, which was like, what does the Buddha say about being depressed? Uh, the what he talks about is, he talks about grief, but it's almost invariably associated with somebody dying. The kinds of emotions that Westerners, these kind of existential issues, anxiety, depression, angst, they don't seem to be addressed. And there's this question, and I'm not the first one to ask it, of whether people actually had a different relationship to their emotions, or there were different emotional sort of states that people experienced 2,500 years ago, that something has happened, right? And that's different, and or whether the Buddha just wasn't really like, that wasn't his jam, you know. He was like, let's not talk about that. Like, but and you know, not to get too in the weeds, but the idea of the individual as sort of the core, um, what uh, maybe like the most important uh, person in society, that individuals are important. That's a relatively new idea, right? Just in the last several hundred years, but I think goes to the Enlightenment, maybe the 16th century. So, you know, which is really hard for us to conceive in our culture, which is very individually oriented. But we can see it in certain, you know, Asian cultures, the sort of remnants of that, that the individual isn't prized so much as the community would be, or society would be. And so again, it really becomes a just an idea, like that you could imagine that, like, if you didn't think that your emotions were really that important, you know, that you wouldn't really talk about depression or anxiety, you know, that would just not be like the thing, you know. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but you know, what can I say? Do my best. Um, but yeah, okay. I mean, just to take that idea, then you know, you'd be focusing on something else. Like, is everybody okay? Is the clan doing all right? Are we, you know, the community is sick. You know, the community is sad. Maybe the community is anxious. But so again, I mean, all of that is well and good, but I'm in this time and place and cultural setting and conditioning, which is one in which, from the time I was 14, you know, I started to be treated for depression. You know, it's like it was identified as that, as a condition, right? And like, and and I believed it, you know, and I built up my identity around it to a great extent. A lot of my, you know, my art, my music was expressions of that. So just sorting through all these things, and just in case, you know, I didn't mention addiction, I will say that all of that was also directly tied to drinking and using, which was my way of medicating to deal with the feelings that I wasn't comfortable with. So, my friends, thank you for kindly listening, and we have some time left if people want to chime in. Oh, well, we've got some hands already. Deborah, go ahead.
Oh, Kevin, you made me laugh a lot today. Um, I have a couple things to say. One is the simple definition of depression and anxiety is depression is about the past and anxiety is about the future.
Uh-huh. Good.
And then on that way to Spirit Rock, was there some visual that made you feel uncomfortable? You know, like a smokestack, you know, just something to think about.
No, that's actually really pretty, like at that point. Yeah.
And then my last point, you said when the Buddha talks about feelings, he talks mostly about grief. But grief is present in our life that we don't get to acknowledge or even think
Uh-huh.
about.
Right.
because it's all about loss.
Mm.
You lost your favorite toy, you lost your youth, you lost your hair, it's and we don't, as a culture, acknowledge that little bit of loss gets us in the habit, and so that grief becomes a process and
Mhm.
part of our lives. Anyway, that's all I
Yeah.
have. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for those reflections. Actually, I wanted to, Monica, maybe you could find, I gave a much better talk last Friday night on this topic at Spirit Rock, and I think they put it up on Dharma Seed. Maybe stick that in the chat. Thank you. Holly, hi.
Oh, yes. Hi.
Hi.
I was just thinking when you were talking about Thich Han and his talks about interbeing,
Yeah.
that kind of brought all that up. And I was thinking maybe in those times, the Buddha was maybe even expecting that the community would take care of each other's emotions, that they were in, that was their job, kind of like, the story where the forest monks uh uh and and he came and he said, how are you doing, and this and that,
Yeah.
like that, like he
Yeah.
was saying, are you taking care of each other, are you okay? And maybe that was the way of the culture,
Yeah.
that everyone would be responsible for everyone, like interbeing, or the story of how the monk was sick and everyone was repulsed, and the Buddha
Mhm.
came and took care of him
Yeah.
and showed them, how to care for that person
Yep.
and themselves, because they were giving of themselves to take care of this person.
Right.
And that would help them feel better. Anyway, that was what popped in.
Yeah. Thank you. That's great. Good reminder. Exactly. Tanya.
Yeah, hey everyone. So I was thinking that probably depression in the way that we think about it is a modern construct, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we can't even imagine living. So first of all, to feel depression, you've got to have some downtime, right?
No, right.
And
Right.
I don't think
Good
they
point.
had downtime 2,500 years ago.
Yeah.
Our modern conveniences have created what would back then have been considered a life of luxury.
Yeah.
Right? Even if we work, just the way, just our modern conveniences give us the opportunity so much to kind of think, oh, I'm depressed, right? I just think they they didn't have time for it back then.
Yeah. That's great.
But I wanted to thank you. That was a good, basically good talk about the Four Noble Truths and suffering. And I've been thinking a lot about labeling and judging, really trying not to judge things because, that's the automatic response. This is
Yep.
good or bad. And I notice the days that I'm able to do that a lot and just not have a judgment about things are just so nice and peaceful. So
Thank
thank
you.
you.
This is why I actually try to use the language of pleasant and unpleasant more about my experiences and my states than good or bad or even painful. Even a word like pain, I think is triggering. When I say it's unpleasant, it seems much more within the kind of spectrum of manageability. It's not pain, it's just unpleasant, so that's fine. So I know there's a ton of little links and stuff in the chat, so maybe I should just let people hang out and click on the various things there. practice guides from Spirit Rock on the 5 aggregates. That's interesting. Oh, Flo, go ahead.
Thank you, Kevin. It was very timely for me because I'm kind of in I am in a little bit of a depression. It seems like the last several trips I've taken, I've always come back. I've gotten COVID multiple times. I am vaccinated. Or I come back and get a cold and my immune system is super suppressed. And then of course it changes, like I can't go on retreat, and then I start to get sad and like depressed and like what did I do wrong or what can I do different. And it's interesting to hear how you navigate those feelings. It's hard sometimes to not go into fix it mode, and I think that was what you were touching on in your talk.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's really uncomfortable to sit with what keeps coming up for me is just restlessness, like extreme restlessness. And I want to do something about it, but I don't, I don't think there is much I could do. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Flo. And again, I'm really sorry you had to go through that right now. It sucks. I think that fix it mode definitely is something that we have to be aware of. And it's not in the sense that we shouldn't do anything. I mean, the first thing is to stop and feel rather than clicking into fix it mode. And when we do feel clearly, though, it gives us more of an opportunity to respond wisely. And so that could be doing something that would help. Hopefully, maybe there is something that we can do. But it's not reactive, right? It's coming out of more an intuitive response. And as you say, sometimes it's like, no, there's really nothing to be done about this. Like, I just need to walk through it. And so the remembrance of impermanence is really, really important working with difficult feelings, because for obvious reasons, but I think the default way of experiencing feelings is that they are solid, and therefore, if we don't do something, they will stay forever. That's kind of the unacknowledged thought. And so to remind yourself, it's like the daily remembrances, remind yourself, this is just a feeling. It's energetic. It's moving. It's not going to last forever. This is unpleasant. I'll be okay, I think is really important. But then sometimes, to do something is wise, cultivate, restlessness, maybe some activity is called for, it depends, right? We have to really consider the circumstances, and certainly like connecting with people and, showing up for ourselves in spiritual settings, and, just wholesome behavior, that we learn in recovery. Much of the guidance in recovery is exactly for this, is to help us to navigate difficult feelings, go to a meeting, call your sponsor, all that kind of stuff, suit up and show up kind of. Those are the basic principles. But again, it's a balance. We really need to like reflect and be thoughtful about how are we responding? Am I reacting to this? Am I, is there this inner tension where I'm mentally fighting with myself? I mean, that's the first thing that's really the thing that I'm trying to address. The rest of it is relatively easy, the wholesome response, but the inner tension, the resistance, and the fighting with it, and the hating it, the aversion, that's the stuff that's really hard to manage. And it's also the stuff that tends to to snowball. And so that's why for me it's really important to stay on that visceral level, on that just feel it, breathe with it. It's okay. And there you go. Thank you. All right, Monica, for our last comment, and then I got to go to the airport.
I gotta go. I was just gonna tell you, I have to go, so I was gonna leave I was running, but I have the Dharma seed. I did post the Dharma seed.
Yeah, thank you. That's great.
So I was gonna tell you, I'll just leave it if we need to talk to people. So
That's all you were going to say.
that's all. Yeah, I have more, a
Okay.
lot more, but I know you're in rush and I'm
No,
rushed.
I mean, I'm not in a rush. I've got time.
Well, what I'm hearing, like I've been having to do some unpleasant stuff with my mother's estate, and
Yeah, right.
so I went outside and I gardened. I went out and worked in my garden. I guess we never, maybe, I mean, I guess what I'm wondering is that the reverse okay too, is that we do to detach sometimes. Maybe that's
Right.
rather than sit there and stew in it. You know?
Absolutely. Thank you for that reminder, Monica, because again, like my orientation is so much like, well, I need to deal with this that like I do forget sometimes. It's like, fine, like, and that's why the suit up and show up, kind of, I just keep going, just do the next right thing rather like I don't have to. It's true, despite my tendency, that I don't have to spend my day absorbed in my own feelings, and that is part of the whole self. As thank you, Mickey, for that. The bondage of self that we get trapped in. So we can see it's a complex, multidimensional thing that. And that there are traps on all sides, that we can fall into, and we have to find our way through all this. And so, thank you all for that discussion and all your thoughts. Kevin, will you be driving a car to the Shambhala Center? I think I'm getting a ride to the Shambhala Center tomorrow, Tanya. So.
That's good. There's very limited parking. That's why I was asking.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Sure. If you can save me a spot, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll try.
Okay. All right, folks.
People pay attention to those signs, and sometimes they don't. So.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well,
if there's not a spot, you'll have to park across the street at there's a shopping center with a Joanne fabric store.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, so we'll try. I'm going to try my best to avoid that for you. So
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a safe trip, Kevin.
Thank you, everybody.
Happy travels.
Thanks. See you soon.